بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان وإخلاص إلى يوم الدين ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته, and welcome to our series of short sessions on the book Refinement of the Souls by Imam Ibn Atā'illah al-Sikandari rahimahullah ta'ala. The Arabic title is al-Arus, al-Hawi, Li Tahdhib al-Nufus. These weekly sessions will take place on this platform, and we hope you benefit from them. This session is just a quick introduction to the whole topic, to the whole purpose of these series of talks, inshallah ta'ala. So the topic of this particular course of weekly sessions is the refinement of the soul. The title explains itself, and it is the purification of the soul, the purification of the heart, discipline, self-discipline, controlling one's desires, removing bad characteristics. This is what we mean by purification of the heart, and personifying or embodying the good characteristics, taking on the good character traits. And this is the topic that we'll be going through, inshallah ta'ala. Our author is Imam Ibn Atā'illah al-Sikandari, who is a great scholar from Alexandria, hence he's known as al-Sikandari. But he spent most of his life in Cairo, and he studied there, he taught there, and he became a great scholar at the Azhar University, and he's buried there in the Qarafa cemetery in Cairo. And a bit about him really, because he was someone who was actually a faqih, a jurist, and in his early life he'd studied the sciences of Islamic, jurisprudence and related sciences, Qur'an, Hadith, etc. And he was well versed, scholarly person. He was a teacher at Azhar University. He had great teachers, and some of his students are great scholars as well, through, in Islamic history. And he met many luminaries in his time as well. And he was sort of against this idea of spirituality, or having a teacher or a guide or a Shaykh, as they call it these days, to help him or guide him through spiritual improvement, enlightenment, the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he avoided such people and he stayed away from them. But once he decided to attend the gathering of a particular Shaykh, Imam Abu al-Abbas Ahmed Ahmed al-Mursi rahimahullah ta'ala, who was a scholar himself of the Qur'an, of the Hadith, and taught tafsir and taught other subjects, but was primarily known for his spirituality, for his guiding his disciples and students to improve themselves, and he had a following there in Cairo. So he knew of him, so he went to his gathering, and he went with a bit of this sort of doubt or defense mechanism built into him, that I'm not going to necessarily accept what's being said here. It's not all according to what I know and what I understand. He was like, his attitude was, this is the Sharia, this is what Allah has commanded us to do and follow, so this is what we should follow, and what other people talk about and discuss isn't necessarily what is to be followed or isn't required, kind of thing. This is extra. So he was of this attitude. When he attended the class of the Shaykh, Shaykh Imam Abu al-Abbas al-Mursi rahmatullah, was talking about the hadith of Jibreel, which is where Jibreel comes in the form of a man, and he's clean white clothes, shiny black hair, and asks the Prophet ﷺ in the presence of the companions, a group of them, several questions, 3 or 4 questions. And among the questions are, what is Islam? And the 5 pillars are mentioned. What is Iman? The 6 articles of faith are mentioned: believing in Allah, the angels, the books, the messengers, etc. And then he asks him the question, what is ihsan? And the Prophet ﷺ says that ihsan is to worship Allah as though you see him, and if not, then know that he sees you, that Allah sees you when you're worshipping him. And then the Shaykh was explaining this hadith and the concept of it. He said, this first concept of Islam is the Sharia. That's why we have laws and we have our pillars. This is the fiqh, right? Jurisprudence, this is what it is. And the second part is the which was known as Iman, is faith. So it's Aqidah, doctrine. It's Tawheed or Ilm al-Tawheed, Ilm al-Kalam, scholastic theology. It developed into that. What ilm al-Tawheed is, Tawheed is the oneness of Allah and the beliefs about Allah's attributes, right? It's usul ad-din, the foundations of our faith, of our religion. Then he said, ihsan, what is ihsan? It's tazkiyatul qalb, it's purification of the heart. Tazkiyatul nafs, purification of the soul. Or tahdhibul nafs, which is the title of the book, al-Hawi, Li Tahdhib al-Nufus. It's the disciplining of the soul. And he mentioned these, and Imam Ibn Atā'illah, who had gone as a skeptical person, actually was taken aback by this approach and realized that he had something missing in his life. Not too dissimilar to Imam Ghazali, although Imam Ghazali didn't really reject the concept of spirituality. He didn't maybe practice it fully as he had wished, let's say, until later on in his life, where he went fully into this and he wrote his great works on spirituality. So Imam Ibn Atā'illah was not too dissimilar in that he discovered that he's been missing something in his life, and he was reborn and he became a follower of this Shaykh, and he started attending his classes and taking guidance from him. And his Shaykh actually told him, you'll be an Imam in both the outer and inner sciences. So he was a great scholar of the Maliki madhab, fiqh, etc. He was very well versed in the Qur'an and Hadith, and he was able to debate scholars. He was a great scholar of the Islamic sciences, as we said. And he then became somebody who wrote many spiritual works, actually had a great spiritual enlightenment and openings, and became a master in self-purification, and actually took on students later on in his life, and taught others, and met other great sheikhs and teachers, of which he talks about in his book. In this book he mentions some of the companions, his colleagues or teachers that he met, that he benefited from. And he started writing works, and amongst his famous works actually is the hikam, the aphorisms, the pieces of wisdom of Imam Ibn Atā'illah, known as al-Hikam al-Ata'iyah, after him. And also a very important book called the Kitab al-Tanweer, the book of illumination. And also he wrote this book, al-Taj al-Arus, the crown of the bride, al-Hawi, which contains, so this is going to crown you, this is going to make you special, and it contains what? Al-Hawi Li Tahdhib al-Nufus, that which is required to discipline the soul. And that's the topic of the whole book, and that's what we're going to be talking about, inshallah ta'ala. But maybe we'll start on this kind of principle, which Imam Ibn Atā'illah mentions in the book itself. And he says that somebody who initiates and starts the spiritual struggle and journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to rectify him or herself, right? Knows there's shortcomings of anger, of envy, of hatred, of love of the world, of arrogance, of pride, this a weakness of iman, a lack of patience, a lack of gratitude to Allah and for the blessings we have, and wants to change that, which is a noble feat to achieve, a noble action to take on, and actually embark on that journey. It's a journey itself, and we say therefore embarking and taking this massive step in life. Imam Ibn Atā'illah, he says this is a person who's reborn. It's a spiritual birth. So just as we're born physically from our physical parents and biologically, etc., so we have a spiritual birth, and this is when you decide to make this journey, when you go and search for a teacher, for a guide, and you accompany those who are on this journey themselves, and that's how you progress. So this is what we'll be talking about, and things like good company and how to make sure you're not in the right, in the wrong places and people. Talking about tawbah, repentance, the first step of the way. Talking about making up for the wrongs, and how to kind of the sort of the comprehensive forms of making supplication and turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we've lost a lot of time in our lives and we need to make up for that. So what do we do, and how do we catch up? So he gives advice on this, and of course disciplining the soul, how to take oneself to account, and to work on the soul itself, and acts of worship and certain mechanisms, and training oneself to improve, and struggling. It's all about the struggle, constantly reminding us of the struggle required. And etiquettes are mentioned. This is the topic that we'll be discussing. So it's an important topic, and in fact it comes under the obligatory knowledge that a Muslim must learn. Just as we've mentioned, Islam is the fiqh, is the sharia. Everybody has to learn how to pray, fast, and all the obligations that they're required to do. And iman is the faith. Iman is the aqidah. Every Muslim has to learn the beliefs of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, of Orthodox Muslims, and uphold them, and believe in them and adhere to them. And therefore, the third aspect that the Prophet ﷺ talked about in this hadith of Jibreel, which is in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and many other collections, sound hadith, is ihsan. Ihsan itself, as a linguistical word, means perfection or beautifying something, doing well. To perfect something, as in do it well, do it good. From husn, like beauty, from handsome, it's beautiful. So ihsan is to do good to others, is to do something in a good way. It requires an object. So we need to do good to ourselves, we need to do good with others in the way we interact. And this is an obligation. It's not merely a recommendation or something that's beneficial or good to do. It's an obligation. It's a requirement of every Muslim to learn the good character traits and embody them and take them on, and to of course learn about the evil or character traits that are diseases of the heart and destroy oneself and one's soul and one's akhirah ultimately, and remove those from oneself. And this is the journey we'll be embarking upon inshallah in these sessions. So we hope to see you inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you for listening to this live stream. Those of you who joined us, jazakumullahu khairan, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.